A Western Conference team could emerge as a possible destination for Jimmy Butler if a trade were to even happen. And we'll break down the possibility. And you sent in your ideas for potential deals, so we'll grade the trade before we debate some theoretical options from around the NBA on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, you are Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil, both of us credentialed Heat media members. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Here's a free handout. Luka Doncic, Finals MVP at like plus 200 last I checked on FanDuel. $5 bet for free. Boom. There you go. If Dallas wins, right? Like it's a good odds on a Mavericks Finals win. We've got some dark horse Jimmy Butler landing spots, and then we're going to grade some trade ideas in a minute. But I wanted to start with a game of Would You Rather. We've done this a few times on the show, David. Over the last few years, there aren't many teams who, based on their success, you would rather be than the Heat. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm not doing this in terms of, like, would you rather have this Heat roster? Like, how does their future pan out against some of the other teams' future? Rather, I want to talk about this in terms of, like, if you had a summer internship in an NBA front office and you had to pick sort of the easiest job, the job that had the least consequential decisions, there's a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made in Miami's front office, but in other front offices across the league. So I'm really talking about this in terms of just job difficulty. Which one of these front offices has the hardest job this summer? And I don't know how many front offices actually face a tougher summer than Miami's front office. So I thought we could try to figure that out. We're going to combine that with some of the risk and the pressure involved. So I'm just going to ask you, considering the decisions that each of these front offices are going to have to make over these next few months, which front office would you rather be a part of? So we'll start with our first one. Would you rather have a job in the Miami Heat's front office or the Cleveland Cavaliers front office?
I'm not sure if I'm going to answer this correctly given the criteria that you just set, but my feeling is that I'm sorry.
There's no correct answer. It's your summer internship. You decide what you're going to do with it.
I feel like Miami's summer is easier to navigate, like especially if you're kind of just an intern. Like, I don't want to say that
way. You're an intern, but you are at the main table. I'll put it that way. Like you're an intern, but you also have Andy Ellisberg's job.
Sure, no, I get it.
Okay.
At the same time, though, I think Miami's summer is easier to navigate. Like they have decisions that they have to make, and certainly more challenging. But I think given the more recent success of this team, and you could say maybe they haven't been all that successful because they haven't won a title, but they kind of sort of have a free pass given the team's stability and the fact that their front office has maintained very, very stable for the better part of the last 30 years. So I feel like you would learn more about the difficulties of having to negotiate with a superstar player, of trying to make the right trade, of balancing the different things that you need to make a roster more complete in Cleveland that you do in Miami. Because I think the bigger challenge right now, if you look at the Cleveland front office, yes, maybe you can get Donovan Mitchell signed or not. That's a huge question mark, and that's point A for anything that you do in Cleveland. But from there, it's a trickle-down effect of, what happens with Darius Garland? Who do we get a coach? We don't even have a coach in place right now. Like who's going to be able to come in here and say, you know what,
that's a good point.
We want to coach this team, whether it's with Donovan, who knows if Darius Garland's a part of it, who knows if Jared Allen's a part of it. There's so much more to negotiate. So it's much more chaotic from my perspective to look at Cleveland's what Cleveland has to deal with this summer. And as such, I kind of would rather have that opportunity. But if it's a matter of just, being able to survive the summer with a job, probably Miami, because I know that I'm probably going to be able to keep it regardless of what happens.
Right. I think I'm with you. I think Cleveland's situation is way harder than Miami's thing, because Miami, you don't have as much control because the guy you want is Donovan Mitchell. And you don't have any say in the matter necessarily.
Right.
And you're sort of waiting on Cleveland to figure out their stuff before you can kind of move in on the things that you want to try to accomplish.
Yeah. Kind of
But
like what they do on the
it's
floor.
almost like
You know how they on the actual basketball games. You know how Miami kind of thrives on opponents making mistakes. Their front office is the same way.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like we're
It's the
kind of
whole thing.
opportunistic. We're waiting to pounce. It's like we're waiting for Cleveland to kind of screw this up, and we'll be right there when you do. So
It's
don't
a
worry
little bit
about it.
like
We're not
having
going
the
anywhere.
second pick in a draft that's kind of tough to decide who the best player is in that draft. It's like, oh, you just deal with it. You take the first one. It's like having the second pick in this NFL draft. It's like, okay, you decide who the best quarterback is, and then we'll just take the second one. And then we have no pressure because we never took the wrong one. We just took the one that was left. And so for Cleveland, you're so right. You've got to hire a head coach. Like Kenny Atkinson's first question in these interviews is probably like, do you think I'm coaching Donovan Mitchell or not? Like, because you keep saying outward in public that you're optimistic, but what's really going to happen here? And the Cavs cannot say anything in good faith, right? They can't give him oh no, don't worry about it, Donovan's staying. Like that would be a flat out lie if they told he could stay, but they don't know that yet. So that part is hard. And then you're exactly right. What do you do after that? What does the team build? If you told me, hey, you're going to get a resolution on this Donovan Mitchell thing within the first couple of days after the finals, like I know I'm going to at least know which way to go. I think I might pick the Cleveland job at that point because then it does sort of everything gets a little bit easier at that stage. But I don't really like. Then I'm like, okay, then I'm trading Donovan Mitchell, and then I just do that. Or he's staying, and then I say, okay, cool. Because then if you look at a Cavs
now we got to deal with Darius though.
Sure, easy trade Darius, but at least I know. Like it's fine. I don't mind making because that team wasn't good enough. But with Donovan Mitchell, at least I know I can pivot. Like I can get good stuff for Darius Garland. Like I'm in a good pivot point as that cat. You could rebuild that thing on the fly, pretty effectively, if you make the right decisions. And those decisions would be very hard. But you at least have the resources to build around Donovan Mitchell if you know he's staying, which you don't know he's staying. And so in this case, I would rather be the Heat than the Cavs. Next one. Would you rather be the Heat or the Atlanta Hawks, who have the number one pick, leapt up in the lottery, and now have the number one pick in a draft that nobody seems to like? What a year to get the luckiest break you've ever probably gotten as a franchise. It's a tough spot for them to be in.
Yeah, I agree, but I think they have a more clear path too, though. It's in terms of you select a player that's of best at number one because you can't really go wrong because there's so much debate about who the number one pick. In a way, kind of is easier, right? It's not a no brainer,
right? Just you can almost just take the one that fits better. You're just like, well, we need a power forward, so we're taking Sarr. It's like, all right, cool,
exactly. And if not, then you start shopping it around in the hopes that somebody else might need something like that, and then you can kind of say, you know what. It's about finalizing a vision and an identity for the front office that trickles down to the team. So I kind of like the place that they're in right now. They're kind of like
you're
starting.
Also dealing with the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray thing. That's not easy.
Yeah. No, I know exactly. So I think you kind of have to lean into it one way or the other. And this is your opportunity to kind of start from scratch. Again, low expectations, no concerns whatsoever. An Atlanta fan base that is kind of like, you know what, we really don't care about what happens next because the team's not that good.
I think there's a lot of concern and pressure over what happens with Trae Young and how they handle that. I think the fan base is pretty split on whether they trade Trae Young or keep him, right? The decision of whether to trade Trae Young and potentially bring back more, but lose.
You see that as a passionate fan base that's kind of like worried about that decision-making process? Because I don't see it that way.
I'm not going to pretend to be plugged into the Atlanta fan base, but I know if that I'm in the Hawks front office that it's not an easy decision, and like it might be easy enough to say like, well, just trade DeJounte Murray, but then you're still sort of dealing with the Trae Young situation, and maybe he's such a talent that it's worth the debate of, well, do we still want to be in on the Trae Young business despite some of the locker room and off court issues because of how talented this guy is? Where DeJounte Murray is easily the better locker room fit. Like every front office would love to have a guy like DeJounte Murray on their roster because of how great his reputation is across the league, but he's not close to the talent that Trae Young is. Right?
I don't know. I think it's easier to pull the plug on a trade deal, to be honest with you. Just kind of cut bait.
You're right.
It hasn't accomplished anything over the last few years. And I realize that there's a trickle-down effect regarding the team's culture and the fan base. It's like, oh, at least we had a superstar we could kind of hang our hats on. It's like, oh, did you really?
It's risky as good a front office, though, isn't it? Like if you trade the face of the franchise and it doesn't work out, you lose your job, don't you?
the face of the franchise. It's kind of like the picture of Dorian Gray. Like, I mean, it really wasn't much of a face to kind of live up to begin with. I don't know. Like, you didn't really do anything over the span of Trey's career. So it's like kind of like, you know what, we did everything we could. We could sell it really well. You know, like look at what's happening in Portland. Like the Portland fan base, they've moved on from Damian Lillard much more easily. And maybe again, you kind of lean into that idea of we're rebuilding here. And Atlanta could do the same thing. It's like, you know what? We tried everything we could to build a team around Trey. It's not working out. We just kind of have to
sell them on the hopes of,
identity.
hey, we got this new young guy, the number 1 pick in the draft. Yeah, you're probably right. They probably would move on pretty quickly. Okay, so you'd rather be the Heat or the Hawks then?
Hawks.
Oh. Yeah, maybe. Okay. I got a couple more for you, and then we're going to talk about some Jimmy Butler trade destinations, and one that could surprise some people. We'll do that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you're, it's winter time, take all time in the NBA and NHL. Go Cats.
Go Cats.
In the finals, Edmonton has no chance. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. They do have a chance, unfortunately. But you know what? I still like the Cats' chances. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll be right back.
Minus 130. Panthers favorites in the Stanley Cup. Pretty good odds, man.
Yeah.
They got a better chance of winning their finals than the Cavs or the Mavericks have to win the finals in the NBA, according to FanDuel.
So you're going for the huge underdog in the upset over the Boston Celtics.
Have you made a pick?
I think I went with the Celtics on Locked On NBA, and I'm supposed to record an episode later on. I'll probably have to make my prediction then. Pains me to say so. I've been getting a lot of crap from Celtics fans because we wind up doing this national show, and I wind up having to talk a lot about the Celtics because unfortunately they're still in it. So I can't say anything. Even last week when we were like, you know what, their path was easy, but they still accomplished what they set out to do. They're in the finals. That's the goal, etc. It's like, oh, this guy Ramil, he's always in his tears. Look at him crying over here like a little baby girl. That's like, oh, Jesus Christ. I can't do anything. I cannot say anything. Path. Yeah. Hey, you said it, not me.
Feel that Celtics. If they win the finals, it's I don't care. But
they're gonna crawl out from the woodwork like little cockroaches wearing Bill Russell jerseys. They're gonna crawl out and find this comment somehow and leave something in a response to this posting. But let me ask you a question because I'm curious about this. Not Heat related, unfortunately. Is this version of the Boston Celtics an all-time team? Like an all-time team that you can look back and be like, boy, that 2024 Celtics team, what a group.
So
they win the title.
If they win the title. Right. Okay. So that was the first qualifier. If they win the title, I'm still going to say no. And
yes.
And I know that Celtics fans will say, well, we got this net rating and this win record.
Yeah.
You won a bunch of games in a really down Eastern Conference. And look, you're a good team. You're an awesome team. You were the most elite team in the regular season. Congrats. You were the best team in the regular season this year. That is meaningful. I'm not even saying that sarcastically. You have proven a lot. You are way better than you were last year. You are way better than you were in the 2022 finals. You are good stuff. All good stuff. I don't care about your net rating, dude. I don't care. I don't care. Not in this league, and I don't care about your 17-2 whatever playoff run. I don't care. Not in this weak Eastern Conference.
Has anybody looked at the Celtics
and I will say this,
and been like scared of them?
No, that's exactly my point. Everybody's like, well, they got the net rating that's like the 2017 Warriors and the 1996 Bulls or whatever Bulls team it was, and it's like, okay, there ain't no Michael Jordan and there ain't no Kevin Durant and there ain't no Steph Curry on this Celtics team. You could still be. You're an amazing team and you've accomplished a lot, but I'm not putting you up there with the late 90s Bulls, and I'm not putting you up there with a dynastic Warriors team if you win a championship. Congrats. You will have won a championship, 18th banner. Congrats. I don't take anything away from it, but I'm going to have to pump the brakes. I'm going to have to get one more reason why this is an all-time team other than net rating. Let's just put it that way. All right. But let's move on to the last couple would you rathers here. We did the Cavs. We did the Hawks. Would you rather be the Miami Heat's front office or the Lakers front office?
Heat. Forget it. Nothing to do with Los Angeles. That seems like a tire fire constantly with a loud whiny fan base that feels like they deserve everything. So no.
That's a tough spot to be in too, because you have the star power,
Yeah.
you have LeBron and
Yeah.
Anthony Davis, and yet it feels like you're pretty far away from winning the West, and that's a
Mhm.
tough spot to be in. Would you rather be the Heat or the Timberwolves? I guess you don't even know
Ooh.
who your boss is in Minnesota, so I think I'd rather be the Heat. I'm not even sure. Like, you don't even
Yeah.
know who your boss is right now, whether it's the owner or Tim Connolly, because you don't know if he's going to stay or go.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right. That's a pretty difficult one. Like my first thought was like, you know what, you kind of have some stability after the run last year, but you kind of also don't. Like
Right.
something about the way they lost to Dallas too makes it feel like almost like they didn't accomplish all that much. It was like an empty path to the Western Conference Finals that if they couldn't capitalize on it, like to me, like they were the favorites over Dallas, and then all of a sudden they just fell so flat, so completely. They were kind of exposed a little bit. So kind of, I don't know, just all the progress they had made, and it seemed like it was all for naught because Karl Anthony Towns withered in the moment. Anthony Edwards wasn't great. It kind of left like, oh, what do we do now? Like we thought we had something, and we kind of really sort of didn't. So I don't know.
If I were them, I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't really do anything. I thought this season was proof of concept that if they do nothing, you're going to go into next season as one of the inner circle contender teams if you're Minnesota, and that's all you can really ask for. But there's also like a 50% chance that my boss is Derek Jeter next year, and so I'm out. I don't want that. Or not Derek Jeter, sorry, A-Rod, not Derek Jeter, the other Yankee, A-Rod. Lightning round, really quick. Would you rather be the Heat or the 76ers front office?
Heat.
I kind of like the Sixers situation. You got a lot of cap space, young rising star in Maxey. I guess the Embiid thing is a little complicated. Is that sort of your hang up there?
Yeah. I never know what the team ceiling is going to be because it hinges on the creakiest knees in the NBA.
Would you rather have the Heat job or the Suns job?
Oh, the Heat for sure. Yeah,
the Suns are like a more extreme version of Lakers. You have all the star power and literally nothing else, and you're just sort of locked into it.
I've already seen Kevin Durant burn through so many front offices. I just don't see that. I was high on their acquisition at the start of last year, and boy, that just did not work out that way.
And Matt Ishbia has now fired how many people in 2 years? Just
as many as it takes.
Would you rather have the Heat job or the Clippers job? That's the Heat job, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough spot.
I kind of like Steve Ballmer's enthusiasm too, you know.
That's true.
The Condor, whatever his name is.
Heat job or the Spurs job?
Spurs.
Yeah, you got Victor Wembanyama. You're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Jimmy Butler because Anthony Slater from The Athletic covers the Warriors over there. He reported that he wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors called about Jimmy Butler if the Heat sort of open up the phone line, start listening to offers on Jimmy this summer, depending on what happens with those contract negotiations. Before we get into some other dark horse landing spots for Jimmy, what do you think about the Warriors trading for Butler?
I think it makes some sense. Like you kind of readjust the timeline. Right now, the timeline looks kind of bleak because Clay might leave, although that seems a little less likely. And you're obviously an older team, but you kind of get an infusion of new blood, kind of like what happened a few seasons ago when they got Wiggins and they were able to kind of parlay that into a run of the title. This season was kind of a step back, but at the same time, now you kind of say, you know what, this is running it back 3.0. You know, we ran it back the first time, we ran it back again after KD and everything else, and now we've got a fourth title out of this. Now we kind of open up the window yet again, and I like some of the points that they were able to make as far as we've already seen that team and that front office, that coaching staff be able to assimilate and assume a superstar level player with a huge ego. And it worked out pretty well. Like they got 2 championships out of it. And obviously he was a much better player at that point in time than even playoff Jimmy. But still, I think Jimmy would contribute in a lot of ways that they could use it. And I kind of just, him and Dre would be like, that would be a really tough son of a bitch lineup for a lot of teams to deal with. And
they would come up with a great nickname for them, like the something twins. Like I don't know what they'd figure something out, but
the Splash Brothers and the Bruise Brothers or something like that.
I don't know. Brothers, I like that. You could wear sunglasses. Jimmy could show up in media day in a suit with a sunglass and a hat. I like the addition a lot. The Warriors and the Heat are in kind of similar situations, but in different situations too, right? Where they're both sort of clinging on to the last bit of a championship window here, but they're doing it in a little bit different ways where the Warriors have that number one guy still in Steph, because I still think he's probably still that, at least for another season. But they don't really have that number 2 guy. Like Klay's not that guy anymore. Draymond's not that guy anymore. Like the difference between Steph and the rest of that roster is pretty vast. And where the Heat have the bona fide number 2 with Jimmy Butler at this stage in his career, he's not the number 1 guy. Can't carry a team through the regular season. Bam Adebayo is like probably the ideal number 3 on a title-winning team, right? And the anchor of your defense, but they just don't have that lead scorer the way that Steph is. And so they kind of have all the things that the other team needs. If they could just combine rosters, like that would be great. But unfortunately, they can't do that, and the Heat aren't going to be trading for Steph. So the Warriors making a call. I guess they made a call for Pascal Siakam. ESPN reported that they even called about LeBron James. Like they see names and they want to go get these guys, and they're all these two-way forwards who make a lot of sense for that roster. I do have a fake Warriors trade that I want to propose to you, but I still want to talk about a couple of other dark horse Jimmy Butler trade destinations. We'll do that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp, and it's something that we talked about before. A lot of people have a lot of things that they want to get off their chest, and it's not necessarily easy for them to do. They're not sure who to talk to. Maybe they want to find the comfort of an unfamiliar voice. Somebody can give unbiased feedback. Maybe it's just a point, you've been thinking about something that's been bothering you of late, or maybe it's some kind of long-term issue that you kind of just need to get a different perspective on. You want to wrap your mind and heart around, and it's not so easy to do. And so if you're thinking about talking to somebody, and you probably should be, then you're probably thinking of starting therapy. And if that's the case, give BetterHelp a try, because it's really easy to use. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient for everyone, flexible and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, super easy. You get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. A friend of mine tried BetterHelp because I talked to him about it, had to change his schedule around, opened up suddenly, he wanted to just move things around. BetterHelp did it just like that, changed therapists. It worked out great. Still seeing that person today. So get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Go visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. And today you'll get a 10% off discount on your first month. That's betterhelp.com. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Our road to 14,000 subscribers is going well. We're almost there. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. Throw us a like while you're doing it. We're going to be joined by Spotrack's Keith Smith later this week to break down all the salary cap nuances, ask him the biggest questions the Heat are facing, maybe some stuff that we don't understand or are overlooking in terms of what the Heat are actually able to do this summer, what kind of players they're able to add or trade for. So we're really looking forward to that. We're also going to have another Blue Notebook, our series scouting some of the NBA draft prospects. We've already looked at centers. We've looked at guards. We're going to be taking a look at some of the forwards available at the 15th pick later this week as well. So make sure you are tuned in all week long. We mentioned the Warriors. That was a little bit of a surprising landing spot, although as we talked about, it does make some sense. Before I got a list of my dark horse landing spots, but is there anybody else? I mean, the 76ers have been out there. That's not a dark horse. They've been pretty public about wanting to maybe trade for Jimmy Butler and give him a max contract extension. But are there any other teams out there that maybe we're not talking about enough? Maybe teams that you think would make some sense for Jimmy Butler?
Well, I mentioned last week the Indiana team, and I know you said you didn't like that fit at all. I still think they kind of could use somebody like that just to kind of like give him the experience and the toughness factor that he might not necessarily have right now. I guess you could look at the Lakers too. Again, another destination for him that would be a lot of, I guess, interesting because, Los Angeles, it's a key entertainment place. You've got LeBron there already. You're already an aging team in some ways. So I think you kind of take in Jimmy's personality. I think he'd be beloved in Los Angeles there. I wonder if New York, again, I know New York is an obvious one because of the Thibodeau factor, but I just also don't see the fit with Jimmy necessarily. But I'm curious to see whether or not there would be any interest from the New York side of things.
The Lakers fit, it makes sense for the Lakers. From an X's and O's standpoint, it would go about as well as the Russell Westbrook thing did in Lakers. It's like, okay, cool. Now you have 3 stars who can't shoot, that don't space the floor. Congrats. It was sort of the same issue they had there. Okay, I've got 5 that I've got listed here. The Spurs, but the Spurs here.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of them just being like, you know what, Victor Wembanyama is good enough. Jimmy Butler's available. Let's go get him. And then like also go trade for a point guard. And now you've got a big three and just going for the playoffs. I kind of like that.
Trae Young, Jimmy Butler, and Victor Wembanyama as your big three.
If you could swing it, I don't know what kind of assets they'd have after trading for. I don't know if they could
Jimmy.
pull off Young and Jimmy, but even like Darius Garland, go ahead and go bring back DeJounte Murray, maybe just go get a real point guard. But I kind of love that idea for them. The Houston Rockets, I've talked about them. I've been talking about them basically since January in terms of if Jimmy Butler were to ever get traded, that just making a ton of sense. The Sacramento Kings seem to me like a team desperate enough to make a big move, like a big swing to try to move their championship needle up. If they were to make Keegan Murray available in a deal, which they were not willing to trade him last summer for anybody. If they were to make him available, that would at least be interesting if you were the Heat. I don't really know if they've got the other things. Is it Keegan Murray plus Harrison Barnes and another like a Trey Lyles contract? I don't know that really does it for Miami, but it would be an interesting team to make a call there. The Memphis Grizzlies might be my favorite potential landing spot for Jimmy in terms of like the weird ones, because they could throw a couple of interesting contracts back at Miami. They've got the Brandon Clark deal. They have some good young players. I really like Vince Williams on the wing. I'm still sort of in on Zion Williams. I don't know. They have draft picks. You would be getting a lot of draft picks back. That would be an interesting one. And if you're the Grizzlies, it's like, cool. Now we got John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jimmy Butler, and Jaren Jackson Jr. That's a heck of a squad to kind of get back into the thick of things in the West next season.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that fit a lot. Would they make Marcus Smart available?
Yep, I think you would have to bring back Marcus Smart, just even from salary cap purposes. But I like, obviously, Heat fans have their issues with Marcus Smart, but he's the definition of one of those guys that, well, if he was playing on our team, we would love him, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right. Couple of fake trades. We're going to grade them. Here's how it works. We read the fake trade, and then we give it a grade. This one comes from a listener. It's Billy from Cleveland, who is our boots on the ground reporter, I guess, in Cleveland, coming up with this with some of the Donovan Mitchell trade scenarios here. He's got a 3-way deal proposed. The Cavs get Tyler Hero, Larry Nance Jr., Josh Richardson, and Thomas Bryant. The Miami Heat get Brandon Ingram, and the New Orleans Pelicans get Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro. And then he makes a note, you trade the picks wherever you need to trade them to make it work. But those are the players that are involved. So the Cavs are getting Tyler Hero and Larry Nance and some salary. The Heat get Brandon Ingram, and the Pelicans get Darius Garland, and then an extra wing defender, I suppose, and Isaac Okoro. What do you think?
So what do the Pelicans have to give up? Ingram. Okay, but he's a free agent, right? So there would be a sign and trade.
He's got a year left.
He does have a year left. Okay,
36 million.
Wow. I don't know, man. I'm not a fan necessarily, so I kind of have a personal bias there. I don't know that he solves Miami's needs. In a way, it kind of just feels like moving some deck chairs because you're so disillusioned with whatever Tyler is, but you're not going to get that kind of production from Ingram either, not consistently enough. There might be a way for him to thrive in Miami, and I guess there's probably a higher ceiling there than there exists for Hero. But I think you're going to see a lot of the same problems, like the injury issues, the failure to step up in the moment. I think you could look at Ingram's career overall and say, yeah, it's pretty much been those factors that have defined it. So not great. So I don't know that you're getting much for Josh and Tyler and Thomas Bryant. I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't know. I like off the cuff right now. This is the first I've seen of the trade. I really am not a fan. What about you? What do you think?
I think you and I are aligned in our thoughts on Brandon Ingram. I like him as a player. I kind of hate him for the Heat's roster, if that makes sense. Sure. He's a good shot maker. I think he makes sense for Cleveland. I don't think he makes sense for Miami because of all the things you said. This guy's a mid-range bucket getter. He's not much of a three-point shooter. He can do it. He just doesn't do it. He's very similar to Tyler Hero, where they just sort of dance into these mid-range shots. And between you're keeping Jimmy Butler in this trade, so you've got Jimmy, you've got Bam, two guys who are all mid-range guys. Miami's offensive problem isn't they got plenty of dudes that can hit the mid-range shot. They need more people who can get to the basket and hit threes at a volume, and they don't really have enough of those guys right now. And I think Tyler Hero has more potential to get there in terms of a three-point shooter than Brandon Ingram does, just based on the fact that he plays guard and he's not a forward. You are getting bigger with Ingram, but you're not solving enough problems for me with this trade. And then, because you're right, the injury issues are going to be there too. So there's going to be a lot of games where you don't have Brandon Ingram or Jimmy Butler available. You probably have 15 games of that coming up this season if you make this trade, right? So that's not a great place to be in. The other part is he's got a year left on his contract, which means you got to pay him. He's going to get the max. This guy's going to make $40+ million a year. I think he's a good player. I think that makes sense for some teams. I don't think that makes sense for the Heat. So that's kind of where I'm at. 26, I want to say, something like that. I think you're right though. I think he is sort of what he is, which is probably a top 60 player in the NBA. But I just don't think it's the right fit. And if you're going to allocate your resources and you're going to go in on somebody, I don't know that this is the guy you want to go in on if you're the Heat. I'd rather just keep your powder dry and wait for something else.
It's like feels like making a move for move's sake, and
it does.
That's not how Miami operates.
Let's do this one quickly because this came out and we already talked about it a little bit.
Oh well, do we actually grade it? Because I'll give it a C+.
I'll go D-. Bleacher Report's Zach Buckley. I think those 2 D- in a row. Let's see if this one's different for me. Bleacher Report's Zach Buckley proposed a package going back to the Warriors' idea. Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney, Brandon Podzinski, and Moses Moody, plus 2 first-round picks, one in 2026 and another in 2028 for Jimmy Butler. So you're getting Wiggins, Looney, Pods, Moody, and 2 first-round picks for Jimmy.
In a way, that's like the perfect deal for Miami because you address a lot of their depth needs. You get some proven players there. Podzinski has been great. He was a guy who had generated a lot of rookie buzz and was
first
a guy
team
that was
all rookie with Jaime, right? Yeah.
And like there was a point in time there when both those names were kind of like being discussed as like the steals of the draft and everything else like that. So a chance to add some youth. I think Wiggins
friends with Tyler. No, Pods is friends with Tyler's brother. Sorry, not Tyler. They're not the same.
Like the younger hero.
Yeah, younger hero. Mm-hmm.
The high school kid.
Yeah, I talked to Pods about it when Golden State was. Well, he was a one and done in college.
I guess, but like you don't see a lot of seniors palling around with freshmen. I guess. All right, whatever. I guess AAU blurs the lines a little bit, but I don't know if that's not a positive thing. At least from my perspective.
It was just a point. I just had info. I just said it. Okay.
I get it. I could see the connection there. I think if Wiggins could find a way of getting back in touch and getting yet another fresh start, like Minnesota didn't work out well for him. Golden State worked out well, but I think that he probably needs to change the scenery yet again.
Yeah.
Miami is as good a place as any to kind of get you on in line and kind of just rehabilitate your love of basketball and your focus on things. I think he could still be a very good player, like defensive-minded wing who can come up big at times with scoring. Like there's potential there. I hate the idea still of trading for Jimmy. Yeah.
Could you move this package, just move it to Cleveland and get Mitchell back?
Like a 3-team trade?
Mm-hmm. Because you could put Wiggins in Cleveland, which has a bunch of storylines around it. Yes. Maybe you keep Kevon. I think you could keep Kevon Looney in that deal, which Looney as Bam's backup would be ideal. That would be a great backup big. And then you move Pods and Moody in these picks to Cleveland, get Mitchell.
Pick, right?
Yeah, maybe you have to throw in one, but you don't have to move all 3 of your first round picks, which is kind of what we're discussing now. And you don't have to deal with Wiggins because I'm with you. He probably does need to change his scenery. I'd rather not that be in Miami probably at first blush. Yeah. So that's something that could happen. I kind of like this deal more if you swap Wiggins out, and I don't know if Golden State would agree to do this, but if you swap out Wiggins and bring back Chris Paul, because Paul's on that non-guaranteed $30 million contract, and then you can just waive that. You just waive that, and you're only getting Looney, Pods, Moody, and the picks back, but you could still move a bunch of that stuff plus some of your own salary to go get Donovan Mitchell, and you're saving $30 million against the cap, which means that you're going to unlock the taxpayer or the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is like $12 million or something this year, and you're just much more flexible. You can re-sign Caleb or Highsmith. Like you open up a lot more financial flexibility than where you are right now, which is right up against that second apron.
Okay,
that's probably what I would counter with if I were the Heat.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Oh, so what do you grade this trade, Pop?
I got this an A-. I actually really like this. If he would have put Chris Paul in the Wiggins spot, I probably would have given it an A+.
Okay,
I think
well,
this,
as is with Wiggins.
if you were gonna trade Jimmy,
yeah,
this is about as good of a package as you're gonna get. I would think. Like this is probably what you would be looking for. In other words, if you were the Heat. Yeah. So I think I've got this as an A-. If you would have put Chris Paul, it would have been an A+.
Really, that's high. I'll go B+ on that. I still have my reservations about the return. And again, unless there's a step down the road where you're going to be able to acquire said superstar, it's going to leave a pretty bad taste in every Heat fan's mouth. So I don't know if that's the path you want to go by, especially given what Jimmy means to the franchise and to the fan base. But it's an interesting proposition. It really is. I don't know about
for the record, this is all in the situation of like Jimmy says, trade me. Right?
Yeah,
that's sort of where I'm sort of whenever I grade these Jimmy Butler trades, that's kind of my starting point. Is we all want Jimmy to stay, but if he's ready to go and you got to trade him, what can you get back for him at that point?
Right.
So
right.
All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your podcast app.